Hello and welcome to I Want to Fight Araki, a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure close analysis podcast. I'm Thomas,
And I'm Emily.
and today we are covering Stardust Crusaders episodes 9, 10, and 11, probably the next most plot important episodes after the episode with Polnareff, just in terms of the stuff that happens and the stuff we can talk about. So, with all that said, let's get into it. So, as Jotaro, Kakyoin, and Anne take some time to walk around Singapore, Kakyoin begins to act very strangely, brutalizing a thief, eating a rhinoceros beetle, and pushing Jotaro off the ledge of a cable car station. Jotaro deduces that something must be wrong with Kakyoin, and thinking he is possessed, Jotaro tosses Kakyoin into a cable car. Kakyoin, having grown several inches, drops the facade as he dissolves into a yellow goop, a stand owned by the stand user, Rubber's Soul. Rubber explains the mechanics of his stand, Yellow Temperance, that the gloop will devour any flesh it comes in contact with, and that it will grow while doing so. As Rubber points out, that Yellow Temperance has already glommed onto Jotaro's finger. Jotaro jumps out of the cable car to escape the range, but Rubber explains that the range is limitless. An, meanwhile, calls Joseph, Abdal, and the real Kakyoin to explain the situation. Jotaro attempts to burn off Yellow Temperance, which only makes it grow, but notices a boy with an ice pop in another cable car. Jotaro jumps to the car and applies the ice, only for it to pierce needles into Jotaro's flesh. A woman points out that neither heat nor ice will remove Yellow Temperance, as the slime-like stand begins leaking out of her and devours a dog. The woman reveals herself to be Rubber, who traps Jotaro once again with Yellow Temperance. Jotaro uses Star Platinum to punch a hole in the bottom of the cable car and jumps down, taking Rubber with him as they plummet to the water. They land, and Jotaro attempts to drown Rubber using Star Platinum, as well as landing a few punches. Rubber admits defeat and reveals that several other stand users have been dispatched to deal with the Crusaders, but most of note is the user of the Hanged Man stand, a man with two right hands and the son of Dio's witch, a man named Jay Guile. Rubber begins inching towards the shore and notices a sewer grate as he informs Jotaro. He sends Yellow Temperance through the grate and restrains Jotaro, but Jotaro, outsmarting Rubber, uses Star Platinum to increase the water pressure under the grate and sends Rubber flying. Rubber begs for mercy before Jotaro unleashes a stand rush on Rubber, ending the fight. As Jotaro and crew head to India, they reflect on how things will be a little more quiet with Anne gone, unbeknownst to them that Anne is in a train car behind them. The group arrives in India, and while everyone chows down on some local cuisine, Polnareff uses the bathroom. While he begins washing his hands, though, he notices a stand wrapped in bandages and metal, but also with two right hands in the mirror, but mysteriously not behind him. Recognizing it as Jay Guile's stand, Polnareff runs out of the restaurant and tells the Crusaders he is going to look for Jay Guile on his own. Avdol calls out Polnareff, saying that there is no way that he can take Jay Guile head on, and that he will surely die. Polnareff brushes Avdol off, saying that it's something he needs to do on his own. As Polnareff begins his search, a cowboy and teenage girl ride out into the desert. The girl begs the cowboy not to leave and that she loves him. The cowboy says that while he always loved her, he must leave. The cowboy leaves the girl in tears and meets with Jay Guile. Just as the snake is about to attack Jay Guile, however, the cowboy summons his stand, which appears in the shape of a gun, and decapitates the snake with a shot, while Jay Guile's hanged man attacks the snake within the reflection of a beer glass, causing the snake to be cut up in real life. The cowboy, named Whole Horse, says that between his stand, the Emperor, and Jay Guile's hanged man, they are unstoppable. Polnareff continues to search Calcutta, finding no leads, when suddenly, during a rainstorm, Whole Horse and Jay Guile appear in front of Polnareff. As the rain stops, though, Jay Guile disappears, and Whole Horse gloats to Polnareff that there is no way for a close-range fighter like Polnareff to stop Whole Horse's shot-capable Emperor. Whole Horse shoots at Polnareff, which the Frenchman attempts to slice with Silver Chariot. However, the bullet curves around the sword and nearly hits Polnareff in the head, if not for the intervention of Avdol. The bullet curves back around, and Avdol attempts to melt the bullet with Magician's Red, but is suddenly stabbed in the back by the hanged man and shot in the head by the bullet, killing him. As Joseph and Jotaro search for Polnareff and Avdol, Kakyoin stumbles across the scene. Polnareff says that Avdol got what he deserved for being so uptight. Kakyoin calls Polnareff out on his comment, but notices Polnareff crying, as Polnareff says it's a pain in the ass that everyone he cares for dies. Whole Horse mocks the duo as Polnareff approaches him. Kakyoin says that Avdol would have wanted them to fight together and that they need to retreat temporarily. Polnareff fails to listen. Just as Polnareff is about to attack Whole Horse, however, the Hanged Man grabs Polnareff through a window and almost stabs him. Kakyoin interrupts with an emerald splash, however, and Polnareff is knocked to the ground as the window is destroyed and Whole Horse's bullet is deflected. Kakyoin steals a car and picks up Polnareff, the two making it out of Whole Horse's range, but Whole Horse notices that Jay Guile is gone. Kakyoin and Polnareff theorize about how the Hanged Man works. While Polnareff believes that the Hanged Man operates in a sort of mirror world, Kakyoin has a different idea. Kakyoin believes that the Hanged Man is actually a sort of living light that once the reflection it resides in is destroyed, will move at the speed of light to a new one, and that it might be possible to damage it in the transition. Just then, however, Kakyoin notices the Hanged Man and the reflection of some metal on the steering wheel. The Hanged Man attacks the two and causes the car to turn over. Polnareff and Kakyoin duck behind a rock to escape any reflective surfaces, but just then a small boy shows up. The Hanged Man zips into the boy's eye and attempts to attack Polnareff. Polnareff begins laughing, however, and kicks sand into the boy's eye. Polnareff summons Silver Chariot and manages to slice the stand as it ducks into the only place it could go, Polnareff's eye. After doing so, Polnareff and Kakyoin hear a scream from a nearby town and, believing it to be Jay Guile, pursue the sound. They come across a man whose torso has been slashed and conclude it to be Jay Guile before a knife is thrown into Polnareff's back by the real Jay Guile. Jay Guile calls over to the townspeople, saying that Polnareff and Kakyoin will give them money. The two crusaders are surrounded, and Jay Guile uses the opportunity to have the Hanged Man escape Polnareff's eye. The Hanged Man zips around the townspeople, slashing at Kakyoin and Polnareff until Kakyoin pulls out a shiny coin. Kakyoin tosses it, and Polnareff throws dust into the townspeople's eyes, forcing the Hanged Man to move toward the coin and be slashed in half by Polnareff. Being inflicted with serious wounds, Jay Guile attempts to escape, but is stopped by a locked gate. Polnareff proclaims revenge for his sister and Avdol and stabs Jay Guile numerous times, killing the assassin. Polnareff and Kakyoin return to town where they are once again confronted by Whole Horse. They inform Whole Horse of Jay Guile's death, and Whole Horse, realizing he would lose a direct confrontation, flees, but is stopped by Jotaro. Polnareff attempts to finish Whole Horse, but is stopped by the girl from earlier, who even cuts her arm on the ground, allowing Whole Horse to escape on horseback. Polnareff is about to lay into her, but Joseph points out that she was manipulated and not at fault. As Joseph tends to the girl's wounds, a small drop of blood lands on his arm. Polnareff recovers from his bouts and vows to join the Crusaders on their quest to stop Dio once again. But as the group walks away, the blood drop on Joseph's arm forms into a small pimple-like object. End of episodes.
Ooh, it's about to get real cursed up in here.
It really is.
It's about to get really cursed.
So, I'm gonna level. I forgot to load up the tarot meanings before we started recording. So I'm gonna load these up one at a time.
Always
and keep
a good
talking
time.
so nobody, this doesn't sound awkward. All right. So the Temperance, which is the first one, upright represents balance, peace, patience, moderation, calm, tranquility, harmony, and serenity, while in reverse it represents imbalance, excess, extremes, discord, recklessness, and hastiness.
I mean, when it comes to our boy, Rubber Boy over here, I'm trying to think of how that fits. I think it does, especially when it just comes to discord, pure chaos. He's just the world's slimiest bastard, just like his
both literally and figuratively.
I feel like his main trait that's shown is that he tries to fake his way out of everything and only cares about himself.
Right.
That's just that is his whole thing.
Yeah.
He is kind of chaotic. He's he does very strange things.
Definitely. I mean, I don't like. Why does he eat like the rhinoceros beetles, or is it
That's a
just
good
like?
question. Like, it's a bug, sir.
And like when no one's around as well.
And
Uh,
it's not even like a bug that people would normally eat. It's
right.
just it's a rhinoceros beetle. It's not like,
um,
yes, people eat crickets, people eat other kinds of bugs, but rhinoceros beetle, hello.
Something I can think of as far as the reverse is excess, like
Oh yeah,
um,
his whole
the way
personality is excessive.
his personality is excessive, but also the way Yellow Temperance devours its enemies is sort of
Consume.
it consumes and it like grows as it consumes. Um,
Gluttony, as you may say.
yes, and gluttony is sort of synonymous with excess in a lot of ways. Um,
Full Metal Alchemist.
Full Metal Alchemist, also any other piece of fiction that deals with the seven deadly sins. Mostly Full Metal Alchemist because we keep bringing
Mostly
that show
Full
up.
Metal. The only one we care about. There are many, but that's the only one that I care about personally.
I guess I don't know. This might be a little bit of a reach, but like he like one thing that Rubber says that I don't know if it necessarily fits with any of these keywords, but I think it's kind of worth noting is that he's really like the first assassin that we see who's like not willing to go to extremes to kill the protagonists. Like he's like, I mean, he
He
obviously
cares
is
more for his own life than.
definitely like he's look, I'm not going to get killed over this thing. Um, but like, of
Did
course he
Dio
does.
actually pay him? That's a question. He probably did. Where did
Well,
Dio get the money?
he says that he's going to get $100 million if he kills them. So like
Ah,
maybe he hasn't been paid yet.
I feel like Dio doesn't have that money, but at the same time, he owns a mansion in Cairo. So, like, where
But
did
does he
he get it?
really own it, or is he just like squatting in it? Like,
But it's like, well, yeah, there was like no furniture in it as well, and it's just like I feel like it was just like I feel like there's probably still a for sale sign on it, and he's
you can only show it at night.
yep.
Is the thing. Yeah, Yellow Temperance, kind of a throwaway episode, not really super
But it's
important.
cursed.
It is very cursed, and we will definitely be talking about it.
We will be talking about the cursed stuff later, so
Um,
be excited for that.
so
Should we
should
talk about the chunky elephant in the room?
yeah, you're talking about the next two episodes?
Yes, just
Yeah,
the
let's get
next two.
into it. So this is the first episode where we have two stand users as the main threats.
And character development.
And character development, and a pretty memorable character is introduced as well, that being Whole
Uh-huh.
Horse. Um,
The king of respecting women.
so speaking of Whole Horse, let's talk about the Emperor. So upright, the Emperor represents stability, structure, protection, authority, control, practicality, focus, and discipline. While in reverse, it represents tyranny, domineering, rigidness, stubbornness, lack of discipline, and recklessness.
I feel like he fits both of those at least a little bit. More
Definitely.
more so reverse, but a tiny bit, you know. I'm trying to remember all the things you just listed.
Yeah, it was a lot. Well, I would say in terms of the upright, control and practicality are,
Oh yeah, those probably the big two.
yeah, those are the big elements of his character. Control in a literal sense, where he can control the way the Emperor's bullets move, and also in terms of like he wants to have control over all the fights that he's in, and that also goes along with practicality, where Whole Horse knows his limits. I mean, even though I feel like the Emperor is still a pretty powerful stand, there's no way he would win against all of the Crusaders using their powers,
And he
even
knows
sans
that.
Abdal. Yeah, and he knows that, he needs to retreat. Um, and then I would say like lack of discipline. He definitely comes off like very cocky. Like he doesn't really use the Emperor to its fullest capabilities. The Emperor is more of a support type stand to support the way the Hanged Man kind of works, where he controls the bullets to break reflective objects, and then the Hanged Man can hide in those objects.
He even at one point states that like he has a lot of he's very cocky, but it seems like in his inner monologue he's not incredibly confident. Like once again,
No,
he knows his limits, and he has this whole thing where he's like he knows that he's on his own. He can't really do a whole lot. Like he just said, I'm the kind of guy who's like that, who supports other people. I work better in a duo. Like he just straight up says that, and says, if I'm not, if I'm not backed up by somebody else, I can't really do anything.
what is an emperor without his kingdom? He's just a
Good
man.
question. Just a cowboy.
Just a heartbreaker.
Just just a bastard. I'd love to go off on a small tangent about Whole Horse.
Yeah, we can do that.
He's such a bastard. My God.
Yeah. I
He's
don't
so
know.
nonchalant about everything and very uncaring, but in a funny way.
I honestly don't understand where the whole horse respecting women meme comes from.
It's straight up
Um,
because he says, I respect women.
oh
In
yeah,
that
that is
in the
right.
later episode, he was like, I don't care if she's ugly, I respect women. And it's like, ah yes, irony. It's like, yes, he
Right.
obviously doesn't respect women at all, but like he states it.
Yeah, like I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's sort of using the teenage girl for like you know romantic stuff. I believe, when we see Whole Horse again later, he like straight up like kicks a woman in the face or something like that. Um,
For an interesting reason.
yeah.
We'll get into that later. That's still like 30 whole episodes from now.
Yeah, but yeah, Whole Horse is definitely. It's interesting that he's a character that's caught on so much.
He's very memorable for the fact that he's the only enemy stand user besides Dio that appears in more than a 2 episode block. Like he comes back
Right.
like 3 times.
Yeah, there's um at least two fights with Whole Horse, and then we see him again a third time. Um, but
It's
yeah, I think it's also pretty interesting that in like a more of a meta sense, where um, you know, like a lot of inspiration for Stardust Crusaders comes from westerns.
oh
Um,
yes.
like Jotaro is said to be based on Clint Eastwood, um, and like all the cowboy characters that he's played. Um, so Whole Horse kind of is like, he looks like a cowboy. He kind of acts like a cowboy in certain ways. The Emperor is literally a gun, which is like a cowboy, type of memorabilia. But Whole Horse is kind of like the anti Clint Eastwood cowboy, where like Clint Eastwood's characters in movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and other films like that. It's usually like he's very stoic. He's very you know quiet. Like he's like a subtle badass. Whereas Whole Horse is like the complete opposite. Like he talks a lot. He doesn't really have any sense of honor. Whole Horse doesn't, or any type of respect for anybody so much, including Dio, as we'll see in future episodes. Um, and I just think it's almost a way of like reinforcing the Western type of themes that Stardust Crusaders kind of plays with a little bit. Is like, here's your typical Western bad guy in Whole Horse.
It's lovely.
Hmm.
He's such a strange one. Uh,
Um,
I had something that I was going to say, but then it completely left my brain. Um,
something about him as a cowboy or something about
Probably something along the lines of that.
well, anyway, I
It's
mean,
gone, anyways.
we can get more into it.
Oh, I have a couple more things though that I have written down so I don't forget them. My
And
man really did ride an elephant, though. That's immoral and cruel, as
yeah,
elephants are not meant to be ridden, and their backs can't handle the weight very well.
and there's two people on the elephant.
Indeed. Also, his lovely quote: "The gun is mightier than the sword." Whole Horse, 1987.
And he's like, ah, it's such a good quote. Um,
Let's not forget the thing that we bring up very often. My stand is gun.
gun. I
Just
have to show
that.
you a video at the end of this that makes sort of fun of that. But
Oh, good. It's just a
I
gun. That's the inner workings of his soul.
yeah.
It's like it's I love the whole concept how yes his stand is supposed to be a reflection of the soul. What is my soul gun?
It's also kind of interesting, and maybe something we could save that I'm sort of developing for like our Golden Wind discussion. But like the way that the Emperor works is very similar to the way that Sex Pistols works in
It
Golden
works like
Wind.
that, but like in a very different way.
Right, yeah. I
It
mean,
does
it's
the same thing, but like instead of an actual gun that shoots bullets that you can move, it's like a regular gun that shoots bullets that are moved by several tiny little goblin creatures that all have their own distinct personalities.
exactly like functionally they're the same. They can redirect bullets. Um, but yeah, that's all I have to say about like the initial whole horse. I'm sure we'll get more into him later on in this episode, but I just kind of want to finish up the tarot discussion first.
Do it.
Um,
Tarot.
so as far as the Hanged Man is upright, it represents sacrifice, waiting, uncertainty, lack of direction, perspective, and contemplation. While in reverse, it represents stalling, disinterest, stagnation, avoiding sacrifice, being standstill, and apathy.
I feel
Um,
like at least two of those things when it came to, didn't you say like distraction or something, or was that one
uh,
of them? Or am I just saying a synonym to something?
I said disinterest, stagnation, avoiding sacrifice, stalling. Maybe
Yeah,
you were thinking.
stalling was the one, and it was like another thing in like the, I guess, the upright one, where he does this whole thing in his fight with Polnareff where he's literally just sort of stalling and just also contemplation. Like he starts taunting Polnareff and I guess making him contemplate many things. He's like, ah, yes, it's your fault that Abdal is dead, and it's
Right.
he goes on like he just goes off on him for a few minutes just to piss him off.
I mean, Jay Guile is essentially a serial killer or like slash serial rapist.
Both at the same time.
Right. And I think he like I would definitely say lack of direction is probably like one of his bigger aspects. Where like it's a very subtle bit, but when they're surrounded by the townspeople, um, he basically says that like his life is going to be filled with like excitement and like lots of other girls that will get the same fate as Polnareff's sister, which I think just kind of shows that like Jay Guile like doesn't have a goal in mind. He just wants
To do terrible things.
right, like he's just in it for like base human pleasure, and like part of his pleasure derives from killing people and raping women and stuff like that.
He just wants to live a quiet life and do his murders.
We're not at part 4 yet. Speaking of
He
serial
just
killers,
wants to live a quiet life.
um, but yeah, I guess maybe I don't know what else. I guess avoiding sacrifice, like the Hanged Man is a very non-confrontational stand, at least like compared to the other ones that we've seen so far, where it like mostly hides in a mirror and like that's how how it attacks people. And it's like a very like in order for the Hanged Man to work, it has to be in like a very specific kind of situation. Um, which I mean, granted, is a pretty common one, but also like once you know the weakness of the Hanged Man, um, it's pretty easily defeatable. Um, it's just a matter of baiting it.
Indeed.
That
It's an
doesn't really work with
interesting
avoiding
stand.
sacrifice, but is worth noting.
It's an interesting stand battle. I quite enjoy it. It's high
Definitely won't be
quality.
ripped off again in part five.
Well, in part 5, it was like a mirror thing, but it was like completely different.
Right.
Like,
It is pretty funny watching it. Like obviously, it's not like Araki had the idea for Man in the Mirror in Stardust Crusaders, but Kakyoin's
because
like,
he was
no,
writing it
no
as he was
Polnareff,
going along.
no Polnareff. There's no such thing as a mirror world. And you just like look over at part five, like,
Perhaps there is a mirror world where everything is reversed just for fun.
um, yeah. So that's kind of what makes this fight funny in hindsight. I also think this fight is probably one of the best conclusions to a fight ever. Because it's honestly like really tense.
Oh, yes.
Up until that. And then just the way that Kakyoin like figures out how to beat him by flipping the coin and using the dust trick again, I think is just so cool. And like it's playing, Polnareff's theme while it goes on, and it's so cool.
I feel like at one point I want to do a whole episode about the score in JoJo because I have things to say about it and things because I do music sometimes. I don't know anything about music theory, but I do know things. I know a couple of scattered things that I can bring into my knowledge.
I would definitely say that part three probably has the most distinctive sound out of
Oh,
all of
yes.
the parts.
In my opinion, I think it has the best background music slash score out of all the parts in my pure honesty.
Definitely, yeah, I would
Like
agree.
I would give it that. If it's like one of the lesser parts when it comes to other things, it has the best music. It really does.
Although I do love Giorno's theme from Golden Wind.
But that's like the only like super recognizable one from Golden Wind.
For
There's a
sure.
couple of
And
others,
part
but
of
it's
that
like
recognizability is from TikTok, but
yeah. But I feel like the music in part 3 is just recognizable if you're a
definitely.
JoJo fan. Like if you hear it, it's like that's it. I know what scene that played in. I can name every scene that because okay, we'll save this for another discussion. But because they have a select number of things for specific situations, kind of like the music in Full Metal Alchemist, where it's like it's the same stuff every time. It brings a good old feeling, a very powerful feeling of nostalgia, which is important, which is
Hmm.
exactly I could go into other things, but I'm gonna sound cringy when I do it. But like that was a big thing that people praised Undertale for was
Yeah.
that ability to do callbacks to certain melodies in completely different songs.
And I think
And
a lot of that, I mean, not to go on an Undertale tangent, but I think a lot of that is because of Toby Fox's like the fact that he's a
the
musician
talented man.
primarily.
He's a talented
Yeah.
man.
Um but yeah, so one thing I kind of want to get into, and I think the bulk of this discussion is going to be about these Whole Horde slash Jay Guile episodes, is like more of in a meta sort of context, where um, I think this is definitely we're supposed to recognize this as a turning point in the story. Um, so I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Some that are sort of meta and some that are more in universe. Just to start with the in universe stuff real quick. I think that, you know, this is obviously a pretty big episode for Polnareff. This is where he gets his revenge against Jay Guile. And the fact that Polnareff has now, he's grown. This is a big moment of growth for Polnareff where he now realizes that, I think we think about Polnareff in like the sort of knight stereotype. And he's sort of growing into it more, where a knight is supposed to be all about chivalry, the greater good, like strong moral ideals. And with his fight against Jay Guile over, he now embodies those more. Like he now realizes, I have to stop Dio. I have to, because Dio represents like a threat to the world. He's in it for more pure reasons. I think the meta sort of aspect where we're supposed to recognize this as a turning point is the fact that there is no title sequence in the second part of this two-parter. It just jumps right in, and it just shows the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure logo with like a big like thwack sound, and it's like, this is serious. We don't even have time to show you the intro.
We're just gonna get real.
Yeah, shit's getting real. And I just think that's a really effective way of, cueing to the audience that these are very different episodes, which they are very different episodes compared to the rest of the season that we've covered.
Especially since it's so unexpected, because the JoJo openings are like usually the big hype openings. They're like they're every episode that you always watch them. I usually watch them. I'm gonna be honest. Like,
yeah,
there's even parts where it's like, for JoJo, it's like it's probably the only anime that I very often watch both the intro and the outro all the way through. Like even the outros I often watch all the way through. Like,
definitely.
all of them. It's just because they're all so good.
Yeah.
So it really emphasizes the fact that, wow, okay, it's getting very real right now.
And
no time for hype. We're getting right into it.
I think, once we get to the back half of Stardust Crusaders, that sort of, shit's getting real theme is going to become more and more apparent. What's interesting about Stardust Crusaders, as I've brought up many, many times, is that it's the most formulaic of every JoJo part. And I feel like when a anime gets formulaic, a lot of the really big moments can sometimes lose their impact. Me personally, I'm a pretty big fan of One Piece. But One Piece does follow a very strict formula, and like the different creative ways it operates within that formula are what make it interesting for me. But whenever Luffy fights like the big boss of whatever island the Straw Hats are on, you're kind of like, all right, I'm kind of expecting like Luffy to make the speech about the friendship and, beat ass in a really good fight, but it doesn't it feels just not quite as impactful. Whereas here, the formula, can lead to that same feeling of stagnation, but for some reason, I think just a lot of the whammy moments hit harder because they exist like outside the formula. Like killing Avdol in these episodes is definitely a whammy sort of moment, and especially with the expectations that we have from part one and part two, where, you know, main characters can and will just die in the middle of seasons. You know, probably a lot of people, when they read this for the first time, thought Avdol had died in that moment, just from what we had, you know, learned about the way JoJo works previously. And it's one thing that's just so effective about these two episodes is the surprise factor of, you know, the shit's getting realness of it.
Very well put. I have chunky paragraphs about a certain character development that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you are done with whatever you are doing.
I am done, yes.
Okay. It's time for some special things. Not that anything that happened before wasn't special, but everything is special. We're all very special.
On I Want to Fight Araki.
Yep. We're all a bunch of special little goblins. Like JoJo. Okay. So where do I start? Because there's a lot to unpack here. The relationship with Polnareff and Avdol, as I described in, I think, 2 episodes ago, reminds me in low-key ways of Zuko and Iroh's relationship in Avatar: The Last Airbender, as in you have the wise person who is generally very well-mannered and just a good, solid human being who has much wisdom, and then you have a sort of a wild card of a character who often acts on their emotions without thinking about it too thoroughly, and generally pretty temperamental as well, and not very wise at all. And you have the wise character who is trying to push them in the right direction, but in a very, like, subtle way. They're like, this character isn't forcing them to change. They're just, like, suggesting that they should, which is why I feel like both relationships in both shows, respectively, are very good and very interesting, because it allows us to see, like, the full transition of the characters, one, getting some wisdom from a friend and then having that, you know, go into their development, but also because the push is subtle, it, you know, it gives them some room to figure it out for themselves as well, which is what I very much like about that. After being attacked by the man who killed his sister, our boy Polnareff, he's like, yes, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go get my revenge alone. And Avdol straight up says, like, before saying anything else, you'll go out for the wool only to come back shorn. And telling them, especially, that he can't go alone because it's simply not a good idea, because he will get hurt. And Polnareff just straight up says he's always been alone and never cared about Dio or any of their problems. Avdol, you know, comes back at him, calling him selfish and asking how he could forget that Dio was the one that brainwashed him, and also, you know, the employer of the terrible serial rapist and murderer that killed his sister, and just caused a lot of problems on purpose for a lot of people. This whole conversation is very important. I practically wrote down the entire thing because every line has something to unpack.
Definitely.
And calls him a coward for running from Dio when he encountered him, specifically saying, you're a coward, don't act like you understand how I feel, referring to his desire to actively pursue his revenge instead of doing so in a more passive and intelligent way. Polnareff is acting out, do it just entirely due to his anger. Okay. Yeah, he's lashing out entirely due to his anger at people he actually cares about, pretending as if he doesn't actually care about them because he is angry. He lashes out at Avdol, causing Avdol to lash out back. But our boy Joseph, he comes in and is like, bro, stop. And saying that they can't make Polnareff do anything. So I feel like a lot of this is very self-explanatory. Okay. I'm trying to think here. I should have written down more things when I thought about them, but I didn't.
I
I feel
think
like a very important thing that Abdul says after this is that says about Polnareff is, I thought he was a better man, and very importantly admits that he did run in fear of Dio, but that is exactly how they will win because he was cautious, unlike Polnareff. And this led me to a galaxy brain moment while I was watching this. Are you ready for this,
I'm
Thomas?
ready.
Are you ready? I don't think you're ready.
I'm strapped in.
Oh gosh, okay, good. Because you need to hold on to your chair right now. So I have an entire section in my notes titled Runaway. And there was a callback in the Yellow Temperance episode where Jotaro finds himself in quite a pickle, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and says the Joestars have a certain philosophy on fighting. I still have one strategy left. Run away, punches a hole in the, like, whatever the little
The
thing
cable
that they're
car.
in, the cable car, and just yeets out of it. And it's interesting, it's interesting how this, like, running away, like, it's a joke, like, it's a running joke. It's like, ah, yes, all the JoJos do this just for fun, and it's always funny.
Mm-hmm.
But here Abdul is saying that running away when you know you can't win is a smarter and better thing to do, just as all the Joestars have done that before, and oftentimes that has led to their victories. Like, if our boy Joseph never decided to just run away from Cars, taking the stone with him, and just steal an airplane and go into a volcano, then Cars would have never been defeated. And if
Right.
Jotaro probably didn't yeet out of there and go into the ocean, then probably wouldn't have defeated Yellow Temperance, or at least would have had a much, much more difficult time doing so. And same thing with that is proved here with Abdul saying you can't be too crazy about this because you're going to get yourself killed. And Abdul sort of, in order to save Polnareff from getting himself killed, gets himself kind of killed, but not really.
Right.
He sort of goes against what he said. I'm coughing here. It's always a good time.
No, I mean, I think that's a really excellent point. It sort of ties into what I feel like is, I mean, more focused on the Jotaro aspect of that than the Polnareff aspect, but I feel as though this kind of ties into Jotaro's arc in a meaningful way, where Jotaro's arc is him learning to accept like family in his life more. And you know, the fact that he uses the Joestar secret technique to win against Yellow Temperance is definitely evidence of that. Especially when you consider that Jotaro is usually a you know, fight first, ask questions later type of guy, and that, you know, Star Platinum is a stand that is much more suited to offense rather than defense. The fact that he sort of makes this tactical decision that wins the fight is really you know, an interesting way in how he develops. I think also the way Polnareff acts is somewhat referential to, you know, what I occasionally bring up with the toxic masculinity, that
We love that.
he's just so focused on this notion of revenge and, like, you know, oh, he's gonna, like, you know, fight whole horse like head on and like beat the shit out of him and stuff like that. And like obviously he can't really take whole horse in a straight fight just because of the way the Emperor works and just because of, you know, the fact that Jay Guile is there. It's sort of Polnareff having to learn that he can't do everything by himself, that he needs friends, and that, you know, just kind of trying to do things by himself and trying to just like go full head on is probably a good way to get himself killed.
I feel like he definitely realizes that when Avdol sort of sacrifices himself, well, not sort of, he sacrifices himself for
Right.
Polnareff, and he probably realized in that moment that, hey, that could have been me, but because of the power of friendship, now Avdol's dead instead of me.
Which,
But
if you
that was
think,
a really sad moment, not gonna lie, especially after that. Like, gosh.
definitely.
Like, you
But if
got
you,
my boy Polnareff. Wait, continue.
I was just
I'll
going to
stop
say,
and
if
say
you
that
sort of
after.
think about it, though, the fact that Avdol kind of, like, you can trace Avdol saving Polnareff here to, like, all of the shenanigans and victories that happen in uh, the back half of Golden Wind, if you think about it, which is, that's another, like, really important, thing that Diavolo. I mean, I don't want to give too much away because, save it for the discussion and all, but, like, Diavolo is a significant threat that, this action sort of helps stop in the end. And that really, obviously we can say this all with hindsight, that because we've watched Golden Wind, like, a first time viewer isn't going to make this connection, but that, as cheesy and as tired of a trope it kind of is in anime, I mean, that kind of is the power of friendship, that, they can sort of, through a series of, like, domino effects, stop, like, another madman in addition to Dio.
Despite the cheesiness of the power of friendship, I love my friends. And there is power in that.
I don't even
That
really,
is where a lot of meaning comes out of life, not gonna lie.
definitely, yeah. I mean, like, friendship has been a, I don't even really consider, like, power of friendship to be all that cheesy. Like, it depends on how it's done, I think.
It really does. Like, if it's
Um,
straight up like fairy tale being like, ah, yes, you forgot
right.
that I have friends and you don't. Oh no, I'm
Or
gonna
like
lose
Yu-Gi-Oh or
now.
something like that. But, I mean, like Hamlet, like, friendship is a really big theme in Hamlet, which is, one of the most celebrated plays of all time. Um, so I definitely think it's, like, a theme that's worth exploring, and that, like, shouldn't necessarily be written off, even if it can be done really poorly sometimes. Anyway,
Just
thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
I feel like we just talked about Madoka Magica a little bit before we started recording, just for fun.
Hmm.
And Madoka Magica really do be having a good exploration of the power of friendship without being cheesy at all,
Yeah.
which is always a good
I haven't
time.
watched it, so I'll take your word for it.
I'm
But
gonna come up with a list of like non-cheesy explorations of the power of friendship and just make a giant list of shows that do it,
hmm,
just for
there's
fun.
definitely a lot out there for sure.
Surprising amounts because, when it's
I
not cheesy, it's subtle, so you have to like look for it a little
I would
bit.
say Avatar actually is a really good
Oh,
example.
definitely. Very much so.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
I want
What
to
else?
mention one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
It's such a sad moment after they think Avdol has died, where Polnareff seems angry at him, and Kakyoin is like, why?
Hmm.
And he says, that's what he gets for lecturing people. He's slow and will get in the way. That's why I wanted to do it by myself. And it's revealed later that our boy Polnareff is crying, and he just like sobs and said, it annoys me so much, people up and dying on me. It just annoys me so much. And I was like, oh wait, that's very painful. I'm not a fan, but I am
Yeah.
a fan at the same time. This is hurting me. And
It.
this could possibly tie into your lovely toxic masculinity theory.
Hmm.
My boy being angry about it and not letting himself act sad, even though he is very sad.
Right. That he sort of
You should be
suppresses.
writing every single little thing you get in the discussions. It needs to be. This is going to be a great theory.
Hopefully.
It's going to be.
I
It's
think
gonna happen.
whenever we plan to do our great theory breakdowns, I'll just like do a binge of I Want to Fight Araki. And it's like, oh, that was really smart, Thomas. Let me write that down. Why, thank you, Thomas.
Very good.
Yeah, so uh, that was all I had. Do you have anything else? Or
I have a section titled Miscellaneous Moments of Character Development that I would like to go through for a hot sec.
mm-hmm.
So we got our queen and right here. Um, Another little I've realized that the entirety of Stardust Crusaders, every Jotaro moment is just our boy Araki trying to establish that yes, Jotaro has a character arc. It's very
Mm-hmm.
subtle, but it's there, and he has the development. Um, when Anne clings onto his arm in fear after Kakyoin does some very cursed things, and Jotaro's totally fine with a little child just being like, "I am afraid, so I will cling on to you."
Yeah.
And although on the outside he doesn't seem like someone that would be fine with it, he's soft. On the inside, he is soft. That is it.
I think the moment as well where he takes the kids, it's called they call it an ice pop, but to me it looks like the sea salt ice cream from Kingdom Hearts,
Popsicle.
where he like uses that to try and get yellow temperance off, and he's like, don't worry, I'll buy you a new ice pop like once we get to the ground. Um, like that's like another soft. That's another moment of like Jotaro being a softie.
I also have something about Nena. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Uh, Sort of three characters got a little bit of, you know, what's the word? What are words? They got a little bit
Well, they're
of
collections of letters that.
they got some aspects of their character established through their interactions with her,
Mm-hmm.
especially Whole Horse. He talks so like she looks at him supposedly in this like big romantic way, and then he's just like talks to her in the most nonchalant way. Just
Yeah,
says,
he
I'm running away because I love you, baby." Just
yeah, he talks like in a very I
he
wouldn't say
talks like he doesn't
nonchalant.
care about her.
Yeah, he talks in such a way that's like he's like overcompensating, I would say. Um like he talks like he's in a bad, like a dime store romance novel or something like that.
But it's also like very loose in a way.
Yeah.
It just you can tell that oh, I dropped something.
Like
You can tell that he doesn't care.
he says what he has to say to get her off his back.
Yeah. And also we have two more characters that get a little good character establishment going on there. We got Polnareff once again, could not care less about her. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get along despite him really loving women, he really doesn't get along with them well. Because he's just too much himself.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And of course, you got him just not caring, and then she like scrapes her elbow, and then Joseph's dad mode activates, and just it's like, okay, we'll patch it up for you. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely speaking of subtle character moments, I would say it's a one for Joseph. Um,
Joseph gets a lot of subtle character moments. It's like most of them have to do with yes, this man is a father. He has two children. One of them he doesn't know about, but
mm-hmm.
it's
But
just like
yeah, you
especially
just
like with the creepy stand user baby. He was like, yes, I know how to make baby food. Yes, I know how to interact with babies. I know how
yeah.
babies work, and I'm good at interacting with them. They generally like me. It's just like, yes, this man is a dad. He's a DILF.
Exactly. And it's just such a far cry when you think about it to all the way back in the beginning of part two, where he's like, shut up or I'll make out with you. And you know, like all that stuff he's telling to that reporter lady.
He's old now.
And now that he's old, he's had a family, he's a lot more, sensitive, and he's a lot more.
He's chill and cautious.
Yeah, exactly.
He's definitely like reflected. To me, he sort of definitely reflects like a lot of the older men that I know that were like, ah, yes, back in my day, I was crazy. I did a bunch of wacky stuff, and now I'm just here chilling. It's just like,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
shouldn't have clicked my mouse a bunch of times just for fun because sensitive mic.
Yeah. It's just a good marker to see like how far he's really come from the beginning of part two.
Indeed. Well,
Should we talk about some silly stuff now?
and some cursed stuff.
Yes,
I have two
silly
sections,
slash curse
silly and
stuff.
cursed. Okay, so the
Um,
first cursed thing I have is the entire episode, honestly. But it's I feel like it's one of those cursed episodes in any anime ever. You have Kakyoin eating a bug and then doing the tongue thing.
right. He tongue fucks the cherry, as I've sort of been calling it.
It's a good way to describe it. And also the scene with the dog just terrifies me to
Oh
my very
yeah, the
core.
dog
It's
is.
like it's the worst dog death in all of JoJo, and that's saying something because there's a lot of dog death.
You don't need to kill the dog there. Come on,
It's
Araki.
so it's a lot. It's there's a lot. It's like
He,
yes, Iggy died like a warrior.
yeah, exactly. This dog, it's like, I mean, like, I just have a lot of questions to be honest. Like, aside from the fact that it's fucking terrifying, um, like, how hard is that dad pulling that? Like, he rips off the dog's head. Like,
It was bad.
I mean, I guess like Yellow Temperance was maybe like had like loosened it, but like it's like I don't even want to like think about it. It's just so,
Let's not.
as a dog owner, it is very offensive to me.
There's also like a lot of like you have the English. Do you understand?
Yeah,
Which is
calling Polnareff Pol
classic.
Pol
Pole
is
pole.
very cursed, I would say.
I think one of my favorite moments in JoJo in general is when Polnareff and Whole Horse confront each other in the middle of the street. Like it's high noon, they're about to have a shootout. This is the Wild West. This is just how it is. And then like they're talking about like stands and whatnot, and he's like, "Yes, I have a gun." And
Hmm.
and then Polnareff's like, "Did I hear that right? You have a pea shooter?" And then proceeds to start laughing his ass off, and surprisingly enough, Whole Horse's response was to also laugh his ass off, and they just go on like this, just like laughing at each other in the middle of the street, just like, and
And
then
the
people
funniest,
are just looking at them like, what is happening? And then immediately, like, they both snap and say, "I'll kill you," and just,
exactly,
it's
yeah.
so good.
No, it's like what is it, like the Mexican standoff? But like, what if they were laughing the entire time instead of being serious?
It's so brilliant. And
Another
there was
thing,
also, oh, what?
no, go ahead.
There's so many like tiny moments that were very funny to me. Like I feel like one of the funniest moments in these episodes to me was also um, when they were like when Avdol and Joseph were informed that the Kakyoin that was with Jotaro was not the real one, and then the real one walks into the room, and they were like, "Oh, where were you?" And he said, "I was sunbathing." And then Joseph says, "In your school uniform?" And he said, "Yes." And he was like, "Okay, it's the real thing."
Yeah, that's a great moment.
It's so good. It's I feel like in the previous two episodes when they joked about why are you always wearing your school uniform because we're good students, but then you got like now it's just become a running joke where it's like, ah, yes, anime really do be like, we are students. And then
Speaking
you
of
got our boy Araki being like, yes, they are students, but now I'm gonna make it funny because I'm aware that it's stupid.
speaking of another running joke that starts in these episodes is Polnareff's bad luck when it comes to using the bathroom.
Oh, iconic. I mean, I can't blame him because I too have a strong preference for clean bathrooms.
I'm definitely against a pig being like my bathroom.
I'm against a pig being in my toilet. I do not find
And the fact that they just like deck the pig with the staff every time someone has to use the
that
bathroom.
pig probably has like a severe concussion. Like Oh boy.
It's very. I don't know if that's the weirdest one or the one from the Justice episode is the weirdest one, but
Boy.
it's certainly up there. And a weird running gag.
Also,
um,
the very iconic, but right after the good old cherry thing, like at the end of the episode, they're just vibing on a train, and Kakyoin is like, "Oh, can I have that cherry?" And they're like, "My favorite. Like, if you're not gonna eat it, I'll totally have it." And he was like, "Okay." So he took the cherry. He did the exact same thing, but
mhm.
just like slightly less cursed. And the Jotaro just looks really pissed off and just gives us a go yada yada. Just a good old, geez, Louise. Why?
um, oh gosh. Um, oh yeah. So two things. One funny, one questionable. Is
Questionable.
so the funny thing is one of the subtle bits I brought up before we started recording is when Polnareff is like going around and it's kind of this like semi-serious scene, like the rain's like falling down and stuff like that. He's like, where's Jay Guile? Where's the man with two right hands? Where's the man with two right hands? And then he says that again, and like it's cutting to like all these townspeople going like, I have no idea. Um, and then he's like, where's Jay Guile? And it just shows like a cow like on the floor, and
Just
he's
chilling.
like, damn it, like no one's giving me any answers.
The cow doesn't know.
The other thing I wanted to ask is, so the fake Kakyoin is yellow temperance, and they say that normal people can see yellow temperance because it's a like fusion of stand and like human flesh. So how come nobody sees um, when the fake Kakyoin creates the fake Hierophant green to get the wallet back?
Huh. Interesting. I
Like
don't
I
know.
get like it makes sense if Jotaro sees it because like he can normally see stands. And like the thief has his back towards it, so like that makes sense.
We
But like
love pointing out a flaw in technicality. It's always a good time.
what about Anne and what about the guy who runs the fruit stand? Um, like they're not seeing this shit. Like
I guess not.
I don't know. It's just like a little, obviously it's not a make or break thing, but
I
just
think
questionable.
I have one more silly thing, and
Yeah, go
it's a
for it.
very good one. At the very end of the episodes, when Whole Horse confronts Polnareff and Kakyoin again, is like, "Hey Jay Guile, you gotta help me out or what?" And he's just like shooting a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Polnareff's like, "That piece of shit's body is a couple miles away. Want to go look?" And my man Whole Horse just like realizes that he's no longer can fight these guys. He doesn't stand a chance. He just says, "Okay, I will." Just starts running away.
Yeah,
But then he runs into the JoJo's and gets punched in the face by Jotaro. And
that's a
it's
great
great.
moment.
And then you got, "I'm running away because I love you, baby." He somehow acquires a horse. Like, where did he get the horse? Who knows?
Reminds me of a lot of the JoJo fighting games. Whenever you play as Johnny or Gyro, they fight like on top of their horses.
Good.
Like
I want a main Whole Horse in one of those games.
apparently, like Whole Horse is the best character in the Dreamcast fighting game.
It's okay. Good to know. I want a main
Yeah,
Whole
but
Horse.
any other things to discuss or?
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, if you want to listen to all the semi-serious, semi-silly, sometimes fully serious, sometimes fully silly stuff that I post and talk about, you can follow me at Thomas M. Brickman on Twitter. I also do another podcast with my buddy Kevin where we talk about video game news, reviews, what we've been playing, anything in between. You can find that by going on YouTube. It's called Post Game Content, and you can keep up with updates relating to that at Post Game Con. That's at Post Game CON on Twitter. And Emily, where can people find you on the internet?
I'm on Twitter at Emily Winkles. I post things. There's a wide range of things.
And
Follow
if
me
you
to find out what those things are.
mostly anime related and mostly really smart writing thoughts.
Sometimes I'm smart.
And if you want to keep up with all the news and hilarious memes that Emily finds and occasionally makes, you can follow the show's accounts. It's at iwanttofightar1 on Twitter and iwanttofightaraki on Instagram. And with all that said, we'll see you guys next time where we cover Stardust Crusaders episodes 12, 13, 14, and 15. We'll see you guys then.